The bridge between storms. The snow had been falling for 3 hours when Marcus Holloway noticed her. He almost didn't. He was late, already late, rushing across the Charles Bridge with his collar turned up against the bitter Prague winter, his mind tangled in the kind of thoughts that come after a long shift at the hospital and an even longer argument with his sister on the phone. His boots clicked against the ancient cobblestones. Steam rose from his breath in small urgent clouds. Then he saw her. She was sitting on one of the wooden benches lining the bridge's edge, hunched over herself like a parenthesis protecting something precious, a gray knitted sweater, completely inappropriate for this weather, wrapped around her rounded belly. Her hood was pulled up, but loose strands of brown hair escaped around her face, damp from the snow. Her head was bowed. Her arms cradled her stomach with the kind of unconscious tenderness that only mothers understand. She wasn't moving. Marcus slowed. He was a doctor. He knew how to read bodies the way other people read faces. The angle of her shoulders told him exhaustion. The stillness told him despair. The slight tremble running through her told him cold, real cold, the kind that had been sitting in her bones for hours. He stopped completely. "Keep walking," said the voice in his head, the practical, tired, already overwhelmed voice that had been managing his life for the past 3 years. "You don't know her. You can't save everyone. You're late." But his feet didn't listen. He turned and walked toward her. "Excuse me," he said gently, stopping a few feet away so he wouldn't startle her. She looked up. Her eyes were red-rimmed and swollen, not from the cold, he realized immediately, from crying. Long, exhausting crying that had gone on well past the point of tears, the kind that hollows a person out. She was young, mid-20s maybe, pretty in the way that grief makes people more visible somehow, raw and unguarded with nowhere left to hide. She blinked at him, said nothing. "Are you all right?" he asked, and even as the words left his mouth he felt their inadequacy. She was clearly not all right. She was visibly pregnant, sitting alone on a bridge in a snowstorm at 11 o'clock at night. She opened her mouth, closed it, looked back down at her belly. "I'm fine," she said quietly. Her voice was accented. Czech, he thought, or perhaps Slovak. "You don't look fine," he said, not unkindly. He crouched slightly to bring himself to her level, the way he did with frightened patience. "How long have you been sitting here?" A long pause. "Since 6, she whispered. Marcus processed that. 5 hours. She'd been sitting in the snow for 5 hours. "Are you in pain? The baby is fine." Her hands tightened around her stomach. "We are both fine. Please." Her voice cracked on the last word and she pressed her lips together, fighting something enormous. "I don't need help." Marcus looked at her, really looked, at the single bag sitting at her feet, stuffed to bursting, a scarf hanging out one side, at her shoes, thin-soled canvas sneakers soaked through with slush, at the way she was shivering now that the wind had picked up, full-body shudders she was clearly trying to suppress. "My name is Marcus," he said. He sat down on the bench beside her, leaving space between them, and she tensed but didn't move away. "I'm a doctor. I work at Motul, the hospital on the hill." He paused. "And I'm not going anywhere until I know you're safe." Her name was Elena. It came out slowly over the next 20 minutes, the way stories come out when someone has been carrying them alone for too long. In fragments, in hesitations, in sentences that started and started again. She was 26. She had moved to Prague from Bratislava 18 months ago, following her husband, Tomas, who had been offered a position at an architecture firm. She had given up her own job, a good one in marketing, to support his career, to build their life together in this city she didn't yet know. She was 7 months pregnant 3 days ago. Tomas had told her he was leaving. Not just leaving her, leaving the apartment, which was in his name. Leaving the lease, which she had no claim to. Leaving her health insurance, which had been covered under his employer plan. He had packed a bag while she stood in the kitchen, holding a cup of tea that went cold in her hands, and he had told her, in a voice she no longer recognized, that he wasn't ready, that he had made a mistake. That she should call her family. Her family was in Bratislava. Her mother was ill. She had no money for a train ticket. She had no friends in Prague beyond couples they had socialized with together. People who would choose sides. People who would look at her with that particular mixture of pity and discomfort she already couldn't bear. She had called 2 shelters. Both were full. She had spent last night in a cafe nursing one coffee until they asked her to leave at midnight. She had spent today walking, and when her feet gave out, she had sat down here, on this bridge, because the lights were on, and she felt somehow less alone with the city spread out around her, the river dark below, the snow turning everything soft and muffled and quiet. I kept thinking someone would figure out what to do, she said, almost to herself. I kept thinking an answer would come. She gave a short, hollow laugh. Stupid. Not stupid, Marcus said. She looked at him sideways, assessing, deciding how much to trust. You're a stranger, she said. I am. Why are you still here? He considered the question. It was a fair one. He had obligations, an apartment to get back to, an early shift tomorrow, a life that was already crowded with its own quiet complications. Because I walked past someone on a bridge once, he said slowly, a long time ago, and I didn't stop, and I've thought about it almost every day since. He paused. I'm not doing that again. Elena was quiet for a long moment. The snow fell around them. Somewhere on the river a boat's horn sounded low and mournful. I don't know what I'm going to do, she admitted. It seemed to cost her something to say it. Her chin trembled and she pressed it down quickly. I don't know how to do this alone. You don't have to figure it all out tonight, Marcus said. Tonight you just have to get warm. His apartment was a 30-minute walk from the bridge. He called ahead, a habit from medical training, always preparing the environment before bringing in the patient, and turned on the heat and the lights and put the kettle on from his phone. He walked beside Elena at her pace, which was slow, one hand occasionally going to her lower back in the way that told him she was more uncomfortable than she was admitting. He didn't push her to talk. He didn't fill the silence with false reassurances. He simply walked with her through the snow-muffled streets of Prague, past the lit windows of restaurants and the dark facades of old buildings, and let the city hold them both. When they reached his building, she stopped at the door. I don't know you, she said again. But this time it was a question more than a statement. No, he agreed. He held the door open. But you're 7 months pregnant and hypothermic and you haven't eaten, have you? She said nothing, which was its own answer. Come in, eat something, sleep somewhere warm. Tomorrow we figure out the rest. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she walked through the door. He gave her his bedroom, she protested, briefly, reflexively. And he told her he'd slept on the couch through 4 years of medical residency and it wouldn't kill him. He made her tea and toast and a bowl of soup from a container in the freezer that his sister had brought over last week. He sat with her while she ate, at the kitchen table, not pushing, not probing, just present. She ate everything. When she was finished, she sat with her hands wrapped around the mug and looked out the window at the snow still falling over the rooftops. Why are you kind, she asked. It was such a simple question, and such a hard one. I don't know, he said honestly. I think sometimes the world just requires it, and you can either answer or you can't. He paused. I had someone be kind to me once when I had nothing. I've been trying to pay it forward ever since. She nodded slowly. Her eyes were heavy now, the kind of exhaustion that crashes in once safety is established, once the body finally believes it can let its guard down. Sleep, he said gently. Everything else waits until morning. She stayed for 3 weeks. He hadn't planned it that way, neither had she. But the morning after the bridge, he made calls. Colleagues, social workers, a housing advocacy organization he donated to for years without fully understanding the scope of what they did. He learned quickly how few options existed for a foreign national without local credit history, without a lease in her name, in the 3rd trimester of pregnancy. He cleared out the 2nd bedroom. It had been functioning as a storage room and occasional study, and told her she could stay until something solid came through. She insisted on contributing. She cooked, extraordinarily well as it turned out, with an instinct for flavor that transformed even his sparse bachelor's pantry into something remarkable. She cleaned. She organized his chaotic medical library with a system so elegant he marveled at it for weeks afterward. She taught him 3 Slovak words a day and laughed, real laughter, the kind that slowly came back to her over those weeks, at his pronunciation. He drove her to her prenatal appointments. He sat in the waiting room reading outdated magazines and told himself it was just the doctor in him, the need to ensure proper monitoring. He mostly believed it. Her daughter was born on a Tuesday in February. Marcus was at work when Elena called. Her water had broken, calm and practical. She had already called a taxi. By the time he got to the hospital, she was in labor and he was technically not her doctor, not her family, not her anything. He stood in the corridor and felt helpless in a way he hadn't since his first year of training. The midwife who emerged 4 hours later had kind eyes. She looked at him, rumpled coat, coffee in hand, clearly not having moved in hours, and said, "Are you the father?" "No," he said. He stopped. "I'm her person," he said finally. "Is she all right?" The midwife smiled. "She's perfect, both of them." He brought them home, his home, the second bedroom now arranged with a second-hand crib he and Elena had assembled one Sunday afternoon with insufficient instructions and excessive laughter. 5 days later, the baby was small and fierce and entirely certain of her own importance, in the way that all new humans seem to be. Elena named her Zora. It meant dawn in Slovak. A beginning, she said, a new light. Marcus stood at the doorway of the second bedroom and watched Elena settle her daughter into the crib for the first time, and felt something shift in him. Slow and tectonic, irreversible, the movement of something very old finding its right place. He didn't say anything, he just watched. Elena looked up and caught him. "You're going to be in her life, aren't you?" she said, not quite a question. "If you'll allow it," he said. She looked at him for a moment. This woman who had been abandoned on a bridge in a snowstorm, who had gotten back up, who had rebuilt herself piece by careful piece in the 3 months he'd known her, who laughed too loudly at her own jokes and cried silently at nature documentaries and made soup that tasted like a memory of something warm. "I think," she said slowly, "that Zora is going to need someone who stops for strangers on bridges." He smiled. It reached all the way to somewhere he'd kept closed for a long time. "I think I can manage that," he said. Outside, the snow had stopped. The city lay quiet and silver under a sky just beginning to lighten at its edges. That thin, tentative blue that comes before dawn proper, before the world remembers itself and starts again. Marcus made tea. Elena rocked Zora. The radiator clicked and hummed, and in the small, warm apartment above the sleeping city, something that had been broken began, slowly and without ceremony, to heal.